Good evening, I'm Prasad Michael and you're watching Kini News, the show that brings you today's biggest stories. An emergency has been declared which will prevent a by-election from taking place. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Abdullah Sultan Ahmad Shah has assented to a proclamation of emergency in Batu Sapi, Sabah. In a statement released this evening, the Comptroller of the Royal Household, Ahmad Fadil Samsudin, said with this proclamation, any proceedings for the Batu Sapi by-election will be discontinued to prevent a fourth wave of COVID-19, and a new date will be determined for the by-election. He said, therefore, His Royal Majesty has assented to the proclamation of emergency for Batu Sapi, Sabah as a proactive measure to curb COVID-19. Nomination day for the Batu Sapi by-election was originally slated for Monday next week. The proclamation was made after an audience with Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, who advised His Majesty of the decision made by the Cabinet on the matter.
Bertindak atas nasihat Jemaah Menteri, Seri Paduka Baginda Tuanku telah berkenan untuk mengisytiharkan darurat bagi kawasan Batu Sapi dan memasyhurkan ordinan darurat Kuasa-Kuasa Perlu 2020 yang membolehkan pilihan raya kecil Batu Sapi dijadualkan pada 5 Disember 2020 dibatalkan dan ditangguhkan ke suatu tarikh yang akan ditentukan kelak.
States in the country which has the COVID-19 outbreak under control may soon have its CMCO status lifted. The government may lift the CMCO in certain states that have shown progress in curbing the spread of COVID-19. However, Senior Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the decision will only be made on Friday.
Sekarang ni KKM sedang menilai dari segi jumlah kes, dari segi penilaian risiko, keberangkalian jangkitan dan sebagainya sedang dinilai. Dan KKM akan membentangkan keputusannya pada hari sidang khas hari Jumaat nanti. InsyaAllah, kalau didapati tidak ada peningkatan kes, pandangan daripada KKM tempat itu sudah pun selamat, statusnya sudah pun boleh dianggap sebagai hijau, negeri hijau, maka kemungkinan beberapa negeri itu akan ditamatkan PKPB mereka.
Ismail stressed that this would still depend on the ministry's findings. Any changes will be announced during his press conference on Friday. Meanwhile, Ismail said 315 people were detained by the police for failing to comply with COVID-19 prevention measures on Tuesday. The number of new cases fell below 1,000 today, and even the Klang Valley showed signs of improvement. Here's the country's latest COVID-19 situation.
Malaysia reported 660 new COVID-19 cases and 4 deaths today. Of the 660 new cases, 4 were import cases. The number of new cases in the Klang Valley reduced to a third of the number reported yesterday. Sabah continues to report the highest number of new cases with 387, followed by the Klang Valley and Negeri Sembilan. 2 deaths were reported in Perak and Sabah respectively, bringing the total national death toll to 322. Meanwhile, the Health Ministry has reported 630 recoveries. This means active cases are now at 12,814.
An opposition lawmaker has called on Anwar Musa to explain why DPKL has allegedly sold 42 plots of land. DAP's Cheras MP Tan Kok Wai has alleged that Kuala Lumpur City Hall has sold 42 plots of land in the past 8 months since Anwar Musa started serving as the Federal Territories Minister. Some of the questions raised by Tan were whether the sales were rushed through and if they had been done by the book.
Dan saya terkejut dan kami semua terkejut. Dalam sedikit masa sahaja, Yang Berhormat Menteri sudah meluluskan dan dilaksanakan oleh DPKL untuk mengubahkan Plan Bandaraya Kuala Lumpur 2020 yang telah digazetkan pada bulan Oktober 2018 setelah keenganan oleh bekas Menteri Yang Berhormat Tengku Adnan untuk menggazetkan walaupun Plan Bandaraya ini telah dibentangkan dan diluluskan oleh DPKL pada tahun 2008.
In a press conference this morning, Tan demanded an explanation from Anwar. Tan alleged that ever since Anwar held his ministerial position, many plots of DPKL-owned land have been sold to private entities to be developed into housing, commercial and other projects. Of the 42 plots, the DAP lawmaker said 4 were in his constituency. The city plan, which lays out how the capital is supposed to be developed, is set to expire on December 31st. Malaysia Kini has contacted Anwar and Kuala Lumpur Mayor Mahadi Cheh Ngah for comment. Pejuang has finally listed its demands for the budget if PN is going to want their support.
Pejuang has listed 12 conditions for the Perikatan Nasional Government to receive the support of the party's MPs for Budget 2021. Pejuang President Mukhris Mahathir said that his party would reject the budget if there were no changes to the conditions put forward. During his debate of the budget in the Dewan Rakyat today, Mukhris brought up conditions on the Employees Provident Fund contributors' savings as well as on the bank loan moratorium.
Arahkan bank-bank untuk melanjutkan moratorium bayaran semula pinjaman bagi peminjam-peminjam yang memerlukan relief itu dan benarkan pencarum KWSP mengeluarkan wang mereka.
Mukhris added that when people had to resort to withdrawing their EPF savings, it meant that the government had failed in helping them. He also called for the government to decrease the allocation to the Prime Minister's department, which was increased from 7.9 billion ringgit to 11 billion ringgit, and to reduce the pay for cabinet members, among others.
Yang keempat, kurangkan jumlah menteri kabinet dan turunkan gaji menteri dan timbalan menteri. Kalau boleh sebanyak 30% sehingga penularan COVID-19 ini terkawal. Lebih baik lagi buat seperti negara Itali, gugurkan saja jawatan-jawatan timbalan menteri.
Meanwhile, former Minister Nazri Abdul Aziz said he was willing to support the budget. However, Nazri said the extension of the loan moratorium and the lump sum withdrawal of EPF Account 1 should be considered by the government.
What is the government currently doing to bring back Joe Low? That is what Gobind Singh asked Parliament today. Puchong MP Gobind Singh Dio questioned in Parliament today on whether the government is still working to repatriate fugitive financier Joe Low.
Tuan Speaker, saya mau tahu, apakah tindakan yang telah pun diambil oleh kerajaan untuk pastikan bahawa kita boleh kembalikan Joe Low ke Malaysia? Kenapa sekarang kita tak dengar berkenaan dengan perkara itu? Walhal kita di sini melihat ke sini, ke sana untuk pastikan bahawa kita ada sumber kewangan untuk meringankan beban rakyat dalam masa yang susah ini. Bagaimana dengan usaha kita untuk kita pastikan bahawa beliau kembali ke Malaysia, tindakan diambil terhadap beliau untuk kesalahan sekiranya ada, dan yang lebih penting, Tuan Speaker, berkenaan dengan harta-harta yang telah pun dilesapkan oleh beliau dalam skandal ini.
This comes after Low claimed to have been on the verge of a deal to sell his assets and settle his 1MDB lawsuits with the United States Department of Justice, but the then administration of Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak was not willing to have documents revealed that would implicate the then UMNO president. Low, in the leaked audio recordings made between May and November 2018, was also keen to indicate that the responsibility of the disappearance of 1MDB funds lay elsewhere and claimed that just before GE14, he had been on the verge of a deal with the US government. Low has consistently expressed his unwillingness to admit wrongdoing and serve jail time, but has often deflected responsibility to Najib. Yesterday, Inspector General of Police Abdul Hamid Badr assured safe passage for Low to return to Malaysia. Hamid said if he was truly innocent, there would be no reason to continue hiding. Coming up next, at least 55 were hurt in Thailand's most violent protests since the new movement emerged. Thai protesters and the police clashed on Tuesday in the worst violence the country has seen since protests began in July.
Thai riot police blasted water cannon on protesters who tried to cut their way through razor wire barricades outside Parliament on Tuesday, as lawmakers discussed possible changes to the Thai constitution. The constitution was drawn up by Thailand's former junta, and protesters want amendments. They also want the removal of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, a former army ruler, and reforms to curb the powers of the monarchy. At least 55 people were hurt, some with gunshot wounds, when demonstrators marching on the Thai parliament clashed with police and royalist counter-protesters in the worst violence since the new youth-led protest movement emerged in July. Police have denied that they had opened fire with live ammunition or rubber bullets and said they were investigating who might have used firearms. Lawmakers inside Parliament were discussing several proposals for amending the Constitution, some of which left the King's powers untouched. Protests, which picked up in July, initially targeted Prayus and constitutional change, but they've since evolved to add calls for the monarch's role to be more accountable and for Thailand to scrap changes that gave the current king personal control of the royal fortune and some army units. The opposition represents a dramatic change in a country where just months ago, any criticism of the monarchy was taboo, since the institution must be revered under the constitution. Hundreds of royalists had earlier gathered to call on lawmakers not to change the constitution. They suspect the anti-government protesters want to abolish the monarchy altogether, which has been denied.
Rescue workers from the Milan White Cross are continuing to find their services are still needed more than ever during the second wave of COVID-19.
Italy registered 32,191 new coronavirus infections over the past 24 hours, the health ministry said on Tuesday. The ministry also reported 731 COVID-19 related deaths, up from 504 the previous day, and the highest daily toll since April 3rd, when the country was in full national lockdown. Italy was the first Western country to be hit by the virus and has seen over 46,000 COVID-19 fatalities since its outbreak emerged in February, the second highest toll in Europe after Britain's. They also reported 1.24 million cases. For rescue workers from the Milan White Cross, the pressure from the pandemic continues as they work to help patients needing urgent COVID-19 care. The small number of paid staff, along with some 130 volunteers from the non-profit organization, work tirelessly across the city of Monza in the Lombardy region, transferring COVID-positive patients and patients suspected to have the virus from their homes to hospital. Their services were pushed to the brink at the start of the year, and it's a similar story during the current second wave. However, this time around, the White Cross members say there is an increase in the number of younger people suffering with the virus.
Questa cosa mi spaventa, nel senso che comunque vedo pazienti della mia età.
It scares me to see patients of my age. We rescue workers usually meet older patients, or people with other illnesses, or younger people who suffered accidents. But to see middle-aged patients who have pneumonia symptoms or breathing difficulties is not easy to accept.
Broncopolmonite, difficoltà respiratoria sicuramente non è.
The northern region of Lombardy, centered on Italy's financial capital Milan, remained the hardest hit area on Tuesday, reporting over 8,000 new cases, up from over 4,000 on Monday.
And that is all from me today. For more stories, you can go to KiniTV.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook for the latest news updates. I'll be back with more tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Prasad Michael. Thank you for watching.